the Celtics lost 128 to 114 to the Bulls at the Garden. Chicago outscored the Celtics, Bob, 39 to 11 in that fourth quarter. And I mean, I sent the emoji to Jeff last night with the little face puking up, but it was green puke. And I said, well, of course it is.
How'd you find that?
The thing that bothers me about this team, Bob, is I don't think they care about winning. I mean, you know what I mean. I mean, really care about winning.
I know what you're saying. Well, I don't know. I haven't seen enough, guys. I'm going to be relying on your judgments. I'm going to a couple games upcoming, and I wasn't in a position. My personal life, I just wasn't in a position to see the game and to see. All I know is I keep track of what's going on a little bit on the phone, and I saw the third quarter score. Oh, I'm feeling good, you know. Yeah. And then I found out before I went to bed. Oh my God, you know. I went, huh? And I picked up the paper. Here, we got trouble right here on the banks of the Charles, folks. Right here, we got trouble, folks. Trouble, and with a capital T. And the word that comes to mind is the E word, which is the last word you ever want to use. Embarrassing. And when you're booed off the court, what is this 3 times now?
Yeah, they were booed pretty bad. I mean, I was sitting there in section 19, Bob, and the boo birds came out. I mean, they started to come out when again Chicago was making their run in the fourth quarter, and you can't blame them because the team they show no emotion. That's the hardest part. Like Gary, I understand what you're saying, Gary, because what you're saying is like, of course they care about winning. Everybody cares about winning, but do you live it? Do you breathe it? Are you going home absolutely miserable to whereas you can't sleep last night after that loss, which you were completely dominated in the fourth quarter?
The analogy I always use, or the example I always use, and perhaps Bob was even at the press conference, is when Bill Parcells said, "I threw up in my mouth last night." Okay, and that's like Parcells is the type of guy where he needed like doctors. Yeah. I mean, the guy was like physically ill if they were losing. That's what I'm talking about. And with this team, it doesn't happen. So Bob, that's number one. To Jeff's point about how Chicago fits, when I watch the Celtics play, I see Jason Tatum gets his, I see Jaylen Brown gets his, and then that's kind of it. And they don't work together. We'll get to Marcus Smart calling out his teammates in a minute, but you just have 2 individual guys that take turns, and that's it.
You know what I would do? It's fresh in my mind because I happened to be talking to Kevin McHale last night in preparation for the tradition at the Sports Museum. He's going to be one of the honorees this year.
Oh, great.
And we were talking about 85, 86. We're talking about the whole era. And he talked about how they complemented each other from day one, which included him coming off the bench behind Max in those first. He wins 2 Sixth Man of the Year awards. But you think about it. They all had their distinct styles and things that they did. But it all worked. Maybe it worked out because Larry was Larry and he could pass the ball to anybody at any time. But the point is, he talked about how they complemented each other, and it's exactly the point. And maybe dig out a few vintage films, some highlights, Coach, and show these guys, how they remember the Knights guys. You guys remember how they passed the ball. I remember writing a game story once. I think this was in the first 80-81 when Kevin was a rookie, the year they won that first championship for that group. And I said, they invented a new sport last night. They called it share ball, not basketball. Yeah. It was share ball. And this is with Tiny and Chris in the backcourt and the other guys up front, Max, Robert, and Larry. And that was the hallmark of that team, the 86 team. Passing, and then of course when Walton came, then it got to be an art form that we're only now seeing again in form of Jokic. He's the closest thing to Walton that we've seen. But anyway, hey, show them how it can be done. I don't know, nothing else seems to be working. This is unimaginable what's happening to me.
Well, it is. I mean, they haven't won at home. And Jeff, I want to get back to Chicago last night as I'm watching the game. Chicago was, obviously they struggled early. I think the Celtics were up by as much as 19.
Yes, 19.
Up by as much as 19. And it's Chicago, it's just not working. But Chicago, I think the second, they had 2 24-second violations because they overpassed.
Right.
They overpassed. I couldn't believe it. And I counted, and I can't remember who was doing the game. Gorman I don't know who was doing the game. It was either Gorman or Scal last night who counted on one possession. They counted 10 passes by the Bulls. They counted. So I'm
then
sitting
you have Al
there
Horford
watching the game.
You have Al Horford coming down, jacking threes with 21 seconds left in the shot clock of all people. Al Horford.
He's supposed to be the grown-up in the room.
Correct.
Right. So,
but is he frustrated, Bob? Is he frustrated to where that's why he's taking those shots? Because listen, the bottom line is, and I've said this for a year plus now, and nobody wants to agree with me. I guess a lot of people don't. Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown just don't play well together. They need a third guy. If they don't have that
one
third
has
guy,
to go.
that point guard, they are not great together. And the other part of it is, and again, I know I got crucified for this when somebody on the radio asked me, are they buddies? And I said, no, they're not buddies. And Bob and I have talked about this. They don't need to be buddies. Larry Bird and Kevin McHale weren't buddies either. But they won at such a high level, it didn't matter. This group, they're not winning at that level. So what I want to see is when Jaylen Brown makes a three, I want to see Jason Tatum get excited, chest bumping him, high-fiving him. When Tatum makes that dunk last night, and he had a ridiculous dunk down the lane, the spin, I want to see Jaylen Brown coming over and fist bumping him and chest bumping him and yelling and screaming. And you see none of it. And it's contagious also. It's contagious to the crowd. It's contagious to the teammates. And it shows some sort of synergy. And again, like Gary gets back to, some sort of wanting to really, really win and show some passion. And this team has none of it. None of it.
Okay, let's get to Marcus. Bob, I'm sure you saw the comments on Marcus Smart. Was basically saying, okay, well, the defense is gunning for Tatum and Brown, and they don't pass the ball. And Marcus is just saying they don't pass the ball.
Yeah.
Now, is this going to be a chemistry issue? Is this going to cause problems? Is it going to fall on deaf ears?
Well, I mean, go ahead, Bob.
What's happening isn't working. Aren't they smart enough to understand this? I mean, they have just it. Now, I haven't had too many times over the last 50 years when I've been watching truly bad Celtic teams. So I've been a few times, and so we've seen stretches of. But this team shouldn't be this bad based on the technical skill that they possess.
Absolutely.
Period. So what you're saying, Gary, I have to buy into completely. And as you were speaking, Jeff, I was thinking of MR Carr's contribution to that team.
Right.
Was immeasurable.
Yes.
On and off the court, as much more off in those early 80s and at the mid, these things do matter. They do. It's obviously they do matter with teams. And I don't think, how can they live with themselves? If this happens, one game's an aberration. We know that. A hiccup, okay, fine. This is 3.
What's the line? 2?
You're being booed off the court at home. And we haven't even hit Veterans Day yet, and this has happened. This is
the Garden.
I'm stunned.
It's supposed to be home court.
I'm stunned. And
here's my problem with Marcus Smart. Here's my problem. I don't disagree with some of the things he's saying. They need to find other ways to get these guys to score, and they do need to pass the ball, right? They do. But Marcus Smart, look in the mirror, my man. You're shooting 28% from 3. You can't run a team. You're not a high-level point guard. I'm telling you, if you looked around the league, how many point guard situations are worse? How many wouldn't you trade? Marcus Smart, Dennis Schroeder, and I'll throw Peyton Pritchard in there, although I think he should play more. You trade that group of point guards for almost any point guard, crew on any team in the entire league right now. You cannot win at a high level with that point guard situation in the NBA. Can't.
Never once in my life.
I'm sorry, Bob. Go ahead.
I mentioned this last time. Never once in my life that I ever thought in my head of calling Marcus Smart a quote unquote point guard. He's not a point guard. Never was. Never will be a point guard. He's a basketball player with unique skill set. Who's a defensively oriented basketball player who once in a while can make a 3, and he brings a pizzazz. But anyway, he's not a point guard.
Off the bench is where he belongs.
Right.
For a good team, if you bring Marcus Smart as your first guard off the bench, that is a good playoff team that maybe can contend for one of the top 3 or 4 seeds and maybe get to the Eastern Conference Finals.